Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Embassy of Italy and the Digital Diplomacy Series. My name is Andrea Sandra. I'm a Press and Public Affairs Officer here at the Embassy. Just a few technicalities before we start. If you need Wi-Fi, it's Embassy Guest, and the password is Digital Italy, small letters or one word, Digital Italy. If you're interested in our digital diplomacy program, we have a website with all kinds of information of everything that we do. It's twiplomacy.it, twiplomacy.it. And tonight we're also live on YouTube and Facebook, so you can check out our pages there and share them as much as possible. There's a hashtag for the night if you want to tweet or use it on social media. It's live diplomacy, but without I'll introduce Ambassador Armando Varricchio, Italian ambassador to the United States. Ambassador.
Welcome back, because with this event tonight, we are resuming our series of digital diplomacy events. It's nice to see so many familiar faces here tonight as one us for the debut of our fall program. Today is all about video. It's all about the importance that images, photos, and videos have for public diplomacy and for the storytelling in the area of diplomacy and foreign policy. If a photo is worth 1,000 words, a video is worth many more. What about live video then, or even virtual reality? Here in the Embassy, we try every day to be better storytellers, to explain what we do and why we do it. Our goal is to nurture a dialogue with our stakeholders, with you, with the larger community, made out of all those who love Italy, those who are discovering it for the first time, and of course, with all of you. This is of the utmost importance for us. And this is even more now in these few weeks before the Prime Minister rends his visit to Washington, D.C. Follow us on social media to learn more about us and the upcoming visit through photos, videos, and yes, even live videos. But before starting our panel, I would like to express my special thanks for being our moderator here tonight. Caitlin is a Senior Vice President and Director of Media Group in Edelman's DC office. As many of you know, she previously served as a Special Assistant to President Obama, National Security Council Senior Director for Strategic Communications and Press, and National Security Council spokesperson. Many thanks also to all of you and all to our panelists. I'm sure that they will touch upon the many opportunities, but also the many challenges of the live video and social media. This is a great responsibility for all of us who serve in public service, who are in the need to promote our image, to come up with a truly effective information, but also to be able to gain and attract all of you. But before and without any much ado, thanks, Caitlin, for guiding us to our discussion today, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Okay, thank you, Mr. Ambassador, and thanks to all of you for coming. I'm honored to host this panel. As the ambassador said, before I came to Edelman, I spent my career in foreign policy, so this is a great privilege for me to get to talk to this audience and this panel about how to use digital social tools and live video in diplomacy. With us today, we've got Zach Duffy from the White House, Michele Lynch from Google, Sharon Yang from Facebook, and Simon Harari from Tumblr. Our colleagues from Twitter wanted very much to be here, but couldn't make it tonight, but I think we've got a fantastic panel even without them. What I'd like to do is ask each of our panelists to just briefly describe what their role is. Then we'll spend 20-25 minutes in conversation here on the stage and then open it up for questions for the remaining time we have. But if I could start with Zach, just quickly explain to us what you do.
Sure. Is this working? Cool. So I work at the White House. I work in the Office of Digital Strategy as the Deputy Director of Online Engagement. That basically means that I help to manage the White House's social media accounts, as well as I handle some of the outreach to digital publishers and look for other opportunities for us to engage online and with new technology.
I work for Tumblr here in Washington, DC, obviously born in Philadelphia, and have been here for a few years now, working at Tumblr for about a year. And I work a lot on our social impact and public policy work, particularly on our partnerships with organisations who are working on issues that we and our users care about.
I'm Michele Lynch from Google. I work in our DC office here, which is primarily government relations and public policy, but I sit on an international relations team that covers an array of kind of global policy issues like trade, free expression, online, internet governance, and I work very closely with a lot of embassies in DC, so happy to see some friends here, and as well as delegations when they're passing through DC. We do a lot of outreach and try to have discussions and dialogue with them.
Hi, my name is Sharon Yang. I'm part of the Global Politics and Outreach team at Facebook, but I focus primarily in the US on the Democratic side. I also wanted to say grazie gentile ambasciatore e Andreas per l'invito. È un piacere, vero piacere essere qui. So basically, I also help candidates, NGOs, agencies understand our platform and use it to the best capabilities they can, and also inform them about our policies.
Great, thank you. So putting on my old government hat, the internet has changed the way we do our jobs as diplomats and in government. It changes the kind of information we can get from overseas. We can see conflicts unfolding with more information than we ever have before. It also allows us to reach out to people where they are. And so the first question I have is really for Zach. How do you think about all of these tools and how to use them to reach out to the public?
Yeah, I think your White House experience showed a little bit in that question, because the motto of the Office of Digital Strategy is to meet people where they are. And so we try and use all of the social media accounts that we have available, both for the president and for the other principals at the White House, to be communicating our mission and things that we're doing in a way that is genuine, that is substantial, but also is reaching people where they are actually spending their time and paying attention. And so for many people, that might be on their Facebook account. It might be on Twitter or on Tumblr or on Google. And there are some examples of things that we've done recently. In terms of diplomacy, the president has several initiatives that he started during his time in office, called the Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative and the Young African Leaders Initiative, which are
YSEALI and YALI, if you're fans of those.
Which are essentially networks that were created to help establish and cultivate young leaders in countries in Africa and Southeast Asia who are interested in helping to build civil society in their countries. We have town halls with them that the president has done quite regularly. And one of the things that we've done more recently is to live stream those town halls, because there are some people who are able to come to the United States to participate in those. But there are many more people who are friends or family or even participants in those networks who don't have the financial means or ability to make their way here. If we stream on Facebook, a lot of those people are actually able to watch and participate and ask questions. And so that's one of the things that we've tried to make a priority for us, is thinking creatively about what are the programs that exist, how can we use social media to substantively add to the programming and make everyone feel included. And then also in much broader ways, you guys have probably seen something like the Alex video that was produced by the White House recently, with the young boy who read a letter that he had written to the president about the refugee crisis. Those are things that come out of the Office of Digital Strategy as well. And so those are thoughts about how can we take an issue, it feels charged, and that we care very much about, and make it relatable and take these letters that might otherwise only exist for the president and back to Alex, and make that a relationship that is wider and broader and that we can all connect to as American people.
So I thought that was a really brilliant piece. I had so many friends on my feed who said, I don't usually share sort of government stuff, but this is too good. This is such a great message. So I thought that was really well done. At the White House, you have leadership from the top, and President Obama, who says, I want to be out there, I want to be trying new things. You also have more resources than I think some of the embassies in town and perhaps some other governments. So oftentimes what we'll see is as a social strategy or digital strategy, people posting the same exact thing across all of their channels. So to our colleagues here from social media, I'd love to hear your thoughts on sort of how do you get beyond that trap when you have limited resources and limited time, and how do you use these tools in the best possible way? What content makes the most sense for kind of each of your outlets, and just how should people with limited resources be thinking about using these different channels so that you're not sort of just putting the same thing out there each time, because we know that not all content gets engaged in the same way across all these platforms. So maybe we can start with you, Simon.
It's a really good question. I think a lot of, particularly government departments, are very resource strapped. And when we speak with them from Tumblr, we generally suggest that you tailor your content to the platform. So you wouldn't use Twitter for a long story. You've only got 140 characters. You wouldn't use Tumblr for an update on what you're doing today. So social media acts as a force multiplier, provided that you put your resources in the right place. So on Tumblr, from our perspective, we specialize in content that's not quite as ephemeral as Twitter, for example. So a tweet lasts 10 seconds unless it's bad. That's generally the rule. If your tweet lasts longer than 10 seconds, you're probably in trouble. On Tumblr, 60% roughly of the engagement that we have with content happens a month after the initial post. So we suggest that quality is the key. You'll get engagement with your content on Tumblr if you're producing quality content rather than a constant flow of information. So from our perspective, we usually focus on GIFs and on video and other visual effects, but we certainly don't suggest that you use Tumblr for everything, rather that you use it sparingly and carefully.
Go ahead, Michele.
Great, thanks. If you will indulge me for a moment, I just want to kind of back up and maybe provide some stats and frame YouTube so that you can understand the audience it's reaching and how to leverage it. So YouTube is a video sharing platform, obviously, and it really is an opportunity to let anyone share something with everyone. It's really a powerful tool for kind of leveling the platform. And it's more than just cat videos, I can assure you. We're seeing people really using it for education purposes. Khan Academy is a great example of how to use YouTube for free education tools. We're also seeing a lot of small businesses in countries around the world using YouTube to kind of advertise and get new followers. There's an example of a woman in the UK who started filming herself putting on makeup. She was over 60 and wanted to show how to put on makeup for mature women. And she got so many subscribers that she was able actually to parlay that into a makeup line. So we're seeing people creating businesses off of it too. And content creators are becoming stars. There was a recent poll with US high school students who were their favorite entertainment stars, if you will, and the top 5 were from YouTube. So we're seeing this enormous shift to people who are able to create content and really be themselves and talk about what they want, and they're getting a lot of attention. I just want to mention our highest subscriber is PewDiePie, who is a Swedish gamer, age 25. He has 48 million subscribers, which is 5 times the population of Sweden, where he's from. So YouTube has this really global audience, and actually 80% of the views are from outside the country where the video is uploaded. And it's also reaching 18 to 49-year-olds more than any cable network in the US. So I guess all that is to say that government should understand this, understand how it's being used, and understand that they can get a very diverse audience on YouTube. And there is no secret recipe, and I think we'll talk about this later, but it's really a place to experiment too, and to kind of leverage these content creators and think about other people who can share your messages. We do have a YouTube for Government website that allows governments to kind of see great examples of other governments that are using it. So I know the Chilean national government has a really good organized site. The White House obviously does. I mean, there's countries and offices from around the world. And it also gives tips on how to really build a community, how to kind of organize your site, how to kind of link people to other content. And then there's also analytics, allows you to see how your users are engaging with the material online.
So I'm sure you are all aware, when you go on Facebook, you primarily go on it to connect with friends and family, see photos, see videos, and then you go on to check on issues that you care about, like the pages about issues that you care about. And so when you're looking at your feed, you have photos of friends and their kids and them getting married. So when we talk to different organizations that have pages, we always remind them, you're trying to fit into this news feed. And so there are 4 ways in which we tell people, this is the way to speak to your audience and fit organically into this news feed. You want to think about content that is authentic and visual. You want to have content that is engaging, that starts a conversation. You also I also think that content that is timely and informative. Social media moves very quickly on Twitter, on Facebook. So you want to get into the hot topics of issues if you want visibility on your newsfeed. And most importantly is you want frequent and varied well on your feed. And the reason being is that we can all like the same pages, have all the same friends, but our news feeds will look completely different depending on what kind of content we engage with. I like photos more, so I will probably see more photos on my news feed. If you, Ambassadore, like videos more, you will probably see more videos on your feed. My feed is politics, travel, fashion, and I like a lot of videos and photos. So if you're going to post content that touches upon 2 of those things, I most likely will see it. So we say variety because depending on your audience, you don't want to miss 2/3 or 3/4 of your audience, and because you're not posting a variety of content depending on what your audience is engaging with. We can go into more detail, but that's kind of basically how we like to tell people to use our platform successfully.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting sort of segue because engaging around different content. I mean, as you've seen governments create things, what are some of the examples of people or organizations who have used your platforms to create what you thought was really engaging content that actually showed that had the sort of analytics behind it to show that it was working? I don't know if you've got some examples of how people have used this really smartly.
All right, I'll dive in there. The first one that comes to mind is the White House, because you're right here. So we've seen the First Lady's office really leverage the content creators, which I was talking about. I think it was a couple weeks ago, the First Lady had a video with Lily Singh, who is a creator from Canada, but she's got, I think, 10 million subscribers, and she's very passionate about education. So they did an interview to kind of coincide with going back to school on the importance of access to education. And so that's a brilliant way to kind of leverage a new audience that someone else already has and to kind of tap into that. There's various other examples of that. We've seen kind of YouTube creators being invited behind the scenes at different government events where they can do a vlog live from that and kind of give you a different view of actually what's going on. We've seen President Obama actually be open to interviews by YouTube creators right after the State of the Union address too, which is, again, a great way to tap into different diverse audiences. We're also seeing more virtual reality. So Ambassador mentioned that in his opening remarks, but there is 360-degree video footage. So the first time we used this with a government was at the Hanover Messe Fair in Germany, which is a big tech fair. It was this past April. So there was 360-degree footage of President Obama and Chancellor Merkel actually touring around. So if you use virtual reality goggles or Google Cardboard, hopefully, then you can actually get the full experience of being there. But you can also just watch it on YouTube. And then we also were able to work with through both conventions and have a 360-degree footage of both candidates at the convention. So it's really neat. You can look around, see people in the audience, see how they're reacting, and it just kind of makes you feel there.
Well, Michele, can I just ask, do you find that people are did you find a lot of engagement around that? I mean, are people more likely to look for something that is 360 degrees and virtual than they are to kind of click on something that is a photo and text? How does that perform for people?
Yeah, I mean, I think
is it worth the time and investment to do that?
That's a great point. I think you need to think very carefully. It's not going to be great for someone standing there giving a speech. You know, if you're going on a tour or you want to show, then I think it can be really effective. But I have to say the footage from Hanover Messe, people were not dying to visit that trade show, unfortunately. On YouTube. But I think it also has to do with how you promote it too. I think if people, it goes back to reinforcing it through channels like Facebook and Twitter and leading people and directing them to those videos. But you're right, it's a big investment, so I would think wisely about it. But if it's done right, it can have a really cool, splash. Great.
The organisations that embrace what Tumblr likes to think it's about are generally the ones that do best, the ones that embrace the visuals, particularly the government departments that can. So the National Park Service, the Department of the Interior, they've got really good Tumblr pages because they can just keep pumping out another photo of another national park every day. The White House, obviously, I'm not going to be left out of that train. They're doing a really good job. Their social media game is really good. Their Tumblr game is terrific. Their Snapchat, good too. I think the First Lady has a lot to do with that as well. And then there are a lot of groups that have recognised that I think Tumblr is a bit more of a place to let your hair down and relax a little bit more. And that goes for NGOs, groups like Refinery 29, Mike, Planned Parenthood have all got really good Tumblr pages. And then there's a few, even we had the Surgeon General in doing a Q&A last week, and he really chilled out and told a few jokes and responded to a few questions that perhaps in the first term of administration you wouldn't respond to. But they embrace the ethos of Tumblr, which is, and if you do that, then I think you find you get a lot more engagement with our users, at least.
So I think the beautiful thing about Facebook is that we offer a variety of ways for you to communicate and produce content on your feed. Prime Minister Renzi used it today to go live. The White House went live today at the last harvesting of the White House garden. I think, again, going back to PM Renzi, actually using it effectively as a head of state is he uses a variety. He uses notes, he uses video, he uses live. A great example, I think, of the use of Facebook Live was actually in June during John Lewis's sit-in. I think maybe a lot of you caught that, when cameras were cut off from the House floor 19 different members of Congress decided to turn to Facebook Live and stream the sit-in live. And that was a really pivotal moment for Facebook Live, because that was exactly what it was created to do, was to bring people behind the scenes and give a very authentic, raw, unfiltered look at what was happening. And they went on for hours, 15-minute chunks, hours, but it really brought an audience in. So, it became a first screen. Instead of looking at Facebook as a second screen experience, it became the first. In terms of, we also have paid features on Facebook as well. And during the Iowa caucus, Bernie Sanders and his campaign wanted to target young millennials in Iowa before the caucus to educate them on how to caucus and the best way of doing that. And the Sanders campaign utilized something very new and got a lot of engagement because it was something that they had never seen before. It's called a Canvas ad. And it is a full screen, mobile optimized experience. And it is, I don't know if any of you have seen a Canvas ad on Facebook. It's a really beautiful experience. It's a really great way to unpack a very complicated story. It takes up the full frame of your phone, and basically we targeted young millennials in Iowa. It got a reach of about 700,000 young people. And you scroll through the experience, and in the final frame, it directs you to a page where to find your polling precinct. So it's a very immersive, engaging Facebook ad. So that was a Canvas ad. If you haven't seen it, we actually have a microsite on it. So I would take a look at that. We have different formats, but that one was really immersive and unpacks really complicated issues in a great experience. We have a congressman on the Hill. This is a great example of somebody using Facebook in a very interesting way and video in a very interesting way on the Hill. There's a congressman from Wisconsin. His name is Mark Pocan. And he wanted to balance, his own personality, convey his personality on the platform while still being very respectful of the audience. And he's a fan of magic. So he has something called Magic Mondays. And so he'll post a short video by himself or with other members of Congress doing a magic trick. And he ties that magic trick into something that he's working on or things that are happening on the Hill. So that is a really authentic way, an engaging way, because you don't know what's going to happen. You're really interested in the trick and how it ties into legislation on the Hill. But you can Google Mark Pocan, and Magic Mondays is his thing, and it gets an incredible amount of engagement. And then a very cheeky video that was posted on Facebook, I think not that long ago, maybe a couple weeks ago. The Australian Embassy in Israel did a video. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it was a behind-the-scenes look at the life of a foreign service officer. Really cheeky. I won't summarize it here, but I would encourage you to take a look because it's very different. Injects a lot of humor, involves the ambassador, and it was actually longer than we advise. We typically advise if you want to go Facebook Live, the longer the better because you'll get more engagement. With videos, you want to keep it to relatively about 60 seconds because your attention span is valuable and also very short. But this was it was 3 or 4 minutes, but you kept on wanting to watch it because it was so cheeky and well written and well produced. So you have two ends of the spectrum. Facebook Live is rewarded because it's unfiltered, shot like a real person would use a phone. All of you guys have the power of broadcast in your pocket now with your phones. And then you have the other side of the spectrum where you can have something very polished and finished. So there's a variety of ways to use Facebook and Facebook well. And if you have any questions about that, we can talk about it after.
I just wanted to jump in for a second because I think all of the answers you guys gave are really interesting and totally true. You want to be as genuine on each platform as possible to use them in the ways that the users are using them. And I think that government faces an interesting challenge because unlike the private sector, you sometimes have the competing of needing to do things that are important for the public to know about, but aren't necessarily going to be your best performing posts of all time, or to be providing information for the sake of transparency, in addition to making sure that what you put out is entertaining. And so, in circumstances like with our YouTube page, we're posting every press briefing, which maybe is not being viewed by every American, but it's important that we have that information for people to access. And so I think that there's interesting challenges that come up for the White House about thinking about how do we take some issues which we need to be communicating, like Zika, and how you can respond to that and protect yourself and your family, and take the lessons of what works well on Tumblr or on YouTube or on Facebook and apply it to something which, as compared to some of the other pieces we put out, performer, but we know that we want it to reach the widest possible audience.
Segue to the last question I've got before we throw it out to the audience, and it's for you, Zach. I think one of the questions I think people have is, when you're putting out so much content, how do you know when it's really reaching them, and what kind of feedback do you get? How much of it is sort of people sending you angry messages about something they hate? How much of it is genuinely kind of good feedback that you can use, and how do you use that then in terms of the policymaking process and informing kind of broader government?
Yeah, so I think there's several ways. First of all of the folks up here, their companies have put a lot of work and time into developing really good analytics. And so you can actually go into the back end of Tumblr or YouTube and Facebook and see how something performed, and you can do some decent A/B testing and things like that to try and figure out how are we reaching the most people. One way. On another aspect, the White House also measures the correspondence that it gets in. And so we've tried to do things that are innovative about making sure that people can correspond to us in most accessible. Recently, we launched a messenger bot for Facebook so that people could just send us a chat on Facebook. It'll letter coming to the president or an email. It comes to the same location. People will treat it in the same ways. And you can actually talk to us about what your priorities are, what you're thinking about for your family. And that is a way that we've used technology to make, with the White House, easier and more accessible to all people. People can comment, and we do as many things as we can to try and make sure that there's two-way communication. And both the president and our senior staff. One person, for instance, who does this a lot is Valerie Jarrett. She has weekly Q&As with the public that she does on Twitter and sometimes on Tumblr. You mentioned the Surgeon General's Q&A, which happened recently through the Answer Time platform. So there's a lot of things that we've been trying to make sure are happening that way, to actually have questions answered that might not otherwise have been surfaced if we didn't make those efforts.
And I think it's been interesting for me to move from government to the private sector and find that very much translates, whether you're a brand or a company or a government. People want to feel that you are listening and responding to their needs and their desires and their concerns, that it can't be sort of you blasting out information and taking it in but not doing anything with it. There has to be that kind of give and take. And so I think government's having to learn how to cope with that new information that's coming in, figure out how to decide what's useful and what's not, and how to act upon that. So with that, I'm happy to throw it open to questions. I think there are mics. If you have a question, just raise your hand and let us know who you are, and then go ahead and ask. So right there in the front. Microphone's coming.
Hi, Michael Feldman, Create Equity. I have a question on how you live curated content, particularly cultural diplomacy content, with digital platforms. I thought the South Lawn was a tremendous hit. I already have my Keep DC Weird t-shirt that I'm ready to put on. But how do you take something that's a live event, use digital platforms, particularly video, as a force multiplier?
Thank you.
So South by Southlawn, just to give a little context, is a festival that was just held at the White House. It was inspired by President Obama's visit to South by Southwest earlier this year, where he spoke to entrepreneurs and artists and the makers that were there, and essentially issued a challenge to say that the private sector creates amazing technology, and the people who were there have been focused on solving really hard problems. Now let's take that energy and apply it to things that are really important for the general public and for the world. And so South by Southon was a festival that we held to bring people together from those communities, as well as to reflect some of the most prominent thinkers who have been making change across America, engaged in conversation and celebrating both the work that has already been done, but thinking about the things that we can still do to move America forward and make real progress. So we broadcasted the entire festival on Facebook Live. Our thought there, is first just accessibility. How many people are actually able to fit on the South Lawn? Not so many, and the Secret Service wouldn't let us invite more if we wanted. So part of it is just making sure that people are able to have the experience of attending. Beyond that, we are thinking a lot right now about how we can take the content from there and found people who were interested in the mission of an event like that. So how do you take people who were there and also viewing and have them either profiled in the future or have something like a South by Southon hashtag that is used more regularly. Those are things that we're thinking about actively, but the part of it is really just making sure that people can actually engage with it who aren't there in person. And that's a real revolution for us for the perspective of live programming, because you can engage with it at the moment. So it's not as if you're getting the feeling of being part of it after the fact. You get to see it and tweet about it who were there too.
I think I'll jump in here really quickly. So, I mean, Facebook Live is a great way to amplify and reach, amplify your message and reach where they are. You may have thousands of people that like your presence, like your page, that aren't necessarily geographically where you are. And like what Zach was saying, won't have access to particular events. So again, the power of broadcasting your photo. If there is an event that is happening, why not set up a tripod, set up a phone like that set up? And I don't know how much that costs, but we have you can go on Amazon and there are things that are very budget friendly. And why not broadcast it live just to amplify the message? It doesn't take much more work. It takes strong Wi-Fi connection, and that's about it. And you get so much more engagement and eyeballs. And this will live on the Italy and US page as a video on demand afterwards. So it gets more life even after it's over. We've seen a lot of people do what I think is very engaging, our Facebook Live Q&As. They've got a lot of engagement. It's great because comments and questions can come in real time. You get real-time reactions as well. And people, I think I mentioned before, people like to tune into lives longer. And they comment 10 times more actually on a Facebook Live as it is happening, because of the element of surprise, because of the element of I don't know what's going to happen next. So they continue tuning in and tuning in and tuning in. I don't know how many of you guys saw the BuzzFeed Facebook Live video about watermelons and putting a number of how many rubber bands you could put on around a watermelon before it burst. But I mean, that went on for hours and people just kept on tuning in because they were all invested in knowing. That is not a great, I don't think that fit. I actually don't remember, but that's not a good, that doesn't work in this context. But a Facebook Live, again, is a great unfiltered way to get your message out without involving press. You can break news using a Facebook Live. So it's a very strong amplification tool and really directly speaks to your audience as well.
And I would just quickly add that though it's video footage, you can still engage with the users. There's on YouTube a comment section that you can have someone moderating the comments while it's being live streamed and actually have an engagement with your users, which can also be very powerful.
Back in the back.
Hi, my name is Joe Torella. I'm the U.S. Public Affairs Officer at our embassy in Moldova. I just happen to be in town for the week. My question is actually for Zach. I was wondering if you can explain the creative process that goes into many of the incredible ideas that come out of your team, and perhaps more importantly, how you sell the boss on doing something, participating in something that he may not have even heard of before. For example, between the ferns is probably something that he still can't understand why that works, but it did. So thanks.
So I can only speak to the process within my office because I'm not the one who sells the president directly on those ideas. But within the digital office, we have a team that is full of creative people, including videographers, people who are designers, product managers from all different perspectives. And I think that part of our success just comes from having all of those different perspectives come together. You make sure that you have intentional meetings to brainstorm a lot. And then also a lot of the things that come to us are frankly in the moment. So something like the video with Alex, the young boy who wrote to the president, that was a letter that we had identified as something that we wanted to be promoting. But the video itself was an opportunity that came up with less time. And so it ended up being something that we could do and was a really amazing opportunity for us, and also to spread the message that was really important. On something like Between Two Ferns, I think that generally it's about creatively thinking about how can we meet audiences that are important to reach for something like registering for healthcare. Young people are generally not registered for health insurance, but they are an important group of people who should have health insurance if they didn't already. And so for something like Between Two Ferns, you think about the power of Vanakis as being a person who can speak to the importance of that as well. And so it's really about thinking creatively in those sort of positions about who are the people who have platforms to speak with. How can we use those in ways that are genuine, because it should never feel false. And it should never be untrue to who the president is as well. The president helps a lot because he's a really cool guy. So if you have a cool president, you can do a lot of cool stuff. But I think beyond that, it's a lot of thinking creatively about where that we want to reach, what's the mission that we need to achieve from doing any particular piece, and then also how much time do we have, which is a big thing in government as well.
Up here.
Sorry to make you walk. Jim Hoagland, Washington Post. I wanted to ask about the title of this and to try to bring it back to Digital Diplomacy Goes Live, essentially for Mr. Duffy. Does your office conceive of programs that would further the president's foreign policies, the digital diplomacy part of it? If so, could you describe how that process works and perhaps talk about two specific examples I have in mind? How did your office advance American interests, the president's policies on the Iran nuclear deal, if you did, and on Syria? And also I'd like to ask Sharon Yang, who touched in your very compelling remarks on Facebook's role. Does Facebook see itself as a diplomatic? Does it have a diplomatic component? Because you certainly further international contact, and I just wonder how you think about the specific foreign policy that role.
So I can't speak particularly to the Iran deal because I was not involved with that aspect. And also, I think a lot of the diplomatic pieces of the digital side fall to state. White House ODS is much more involved with putting forward the personal story of the president and the ongoings of the White House. So on that side, I can't provide a lot of information.
That's sad on several scores.
So again, I am not a public policy expert on the Facebook side, but I will say that there's a reason why 87% of governments are on Facebook. It's because it's a great platform and a great tool. Again, it comes down to communications, creating a two-way conversation, and speaking authentically to your audience. So it being used as a presence, I think actually a lot of embassies and a lot of consular offices do this really well, because it's a great platform to not only communicate, but it's a great way to, if you have a citizen that's traveling to the US, it's Facebook, the Italy and US page, for instance, would be a great way to reach those travelers here or those expats here. So it's just another great communications arm. I can speak more to our specific foreign policies, but again, I think if you're not on Facebook, you're not really where people are talking about government and diplomacy.
You know, the 13% that are not on Facebook.
Good question. I will try to find out and get back to you.
Go back to this side right here, second row.
Hi, I'm Janice Mandel. I write a cranky little blog called janicemandel.com. And I'd like to just follow up with the question about, you do say you have a live better, and it's live, and it is unfiltered. So the question is, how do you handle that when the questions start flying, and how do you stick to the mission when, kind of big things are at stake?
So part of what we try to do with Facebook Live as the White House right now is a lot of the president's events are already live streamed. That was a practice that had happened for a while. Whenever he would come out to speak, we try to make sure that there's coverage of those in some ways. And so part of it is just about broader audience with those remarks than before, that we are putting it on Facebook as well as on YouTube, as well as on Twitter, making sure that the platform is wider. So that's the first half of it. On the second half, the job of managing risk is something that falls as much to a broad section of the White House as it does for the digital office itself. We try to make sure that the opportunities that we're using are ones that the president can offer some perspective that we wouldn't get from another part of him doing his daily work. So public appearances, and there are plenty of opportunities for people to ask questions or for him to interact with the public in different ways. The things that we find most useful for work with the president directly or with a person where the question of risk would really come most to the forefront are things like when Muhammad Ali passed away, give us a live tour of his office and talk about his memories of Muhammad Ali, as well as show some of the souvenirs and mementos that he had from his relationship. So he has a boxing glove of Ali's in his private quarters. So he walked people through there. It was in the moment. He was able to reflect on the loss and also talk about the significance of Ali's life, and in an unfiltered way that if we had produced that piece would have been completely different. So for us, it's in part offering an unvarnished view and a real view that maybe doesn't have to have those questions be as relevant in terms of risk, but still take real advantage of the live platform.
The questions can fly, and you just don't know who's going to go off mission.
True, but if we're not doing something that is Q&A format, for instance, it's not necessarily as relevant in live production for us at this moment.
It's all interact. You can get those questions on Twitter with the same, everybody's going to be talking about it on different platforms.
I think for something like the White House or for any politician, there's going to be a lot of criticism that comes in at any given time. And so part of what you do, working to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward, no matter what other people might be saying about it.
Back there?
Hi, I'm Becca Bicott, and I work at the State Department in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. So I was thrilled to hear Yali and Waisili up there today. I had a question about, we talk about authenticity and reaching people in a powerful way, but right now we're all getting prompted a lot to use live content. You know, you go onto Facebook and your status update says, you know, try to do a live video. So how do you maintain authenticity and really reach your audiences with the possibility of too much noise? Because we know that Facebook Live is going to become super popular, or we know that everybody's going to start streaming in different ways. And it is great and it is authentic, but with too much noise, how do you maintain a creative edge?
That's a very good question. With the reason why you see the Facebook Live is because I always prompting you to do that. It's because it's been such a powerful tool with engagement, and we've seen such high numbers of engagement with it. As far as noise goes, I would say that I would not worry too much about the noise, because we do, you know, the newsfeed is based on this algorithm that everybody seems to be really curious about. And that was the whole reasoning behind the algorithm, is to prevent too much noise and really only the content that resonates with you. Does that answer your question?
I think also just from a PR perspective, I mean, at the end of the day, on every single one of these tools and in every kind of communication, the story matters. I mean, you will break through the algorithms and the noise if you have really something compelling to say. And there are lots of ways to think about that, whether it's trying to make it more personal by using a voice like Alex, rather than have necessarily an official kind of policy to you. Can you find a person affected by that policy and have them be a part of that, a moment or an event, but sort of finding those values that can make some compelling storytelling, I think can help you break through, even with all the sort of the technical, the ways that this work as well.
I'll just chime in briefly. I think we've all got those friends on Facebook who post about how close they got to their Fitbit target today, and then how they feel when they wake up in the morning and what they had for breakfast. And see that popping up in your feed, you either subconsciously or deliberately start skipping over that person because they become part of the noise. You know what they're going to say. So to sort of pivot back to what I was saying about quality, not quantity, if you just step back and decide every now and then, is this something that really needs to go up? Is this something that's actually going to either convey the message I'm trying to convey or attention for the right reasons? Then I think you're more likely to cut through the noise than if all you're doing is just contributing to the noise by being a constant presence in people's feeds. That tendency to have to be heard all the time is something I think we have to fight against quite a lot in social media.
Right here. Sorry, I know I'm making you run all around this auditorium.
Well, I'm Andre Goodfriend, also at the State Department, a Foreign Service officer in our Office of E-Diplomacy. And touching on the aspect of engagement, which implies sort of a two-way conversation, as opposed to just putting out information. How do you see strategies for maintaining a meaningful conversation where it's not just posting and walking away, but finding some way to maintain an ongoing relationship with your audience?
I can start. I think with YouTube, it's really curating your content as well. So making sure that you're drawing people in, but then you're leading them somewhere that they're also going to be interested in. So, you know, you mentioned how there's a lot of remarks and speeches because you want government transparency, but you can also, as I know you do, mix that up with, people in civil society who are talking about the issues that you care about and direct your users to that video too. So you can have kind of an auto playlist set up where it's directing people. That's just one way to engage and to kind of keep the attention. But I think we're seeing people on YouTube actually spending more time. The average now watch time is 40 minutes, which is incredible. I think that people are actually staying on there that long and going from video to video. So it's really making sure you're directing people. We also have the ability to put text over certain videos, so as they're watching, it can say, here's more context about this issue, or if you're interested in this, you might like this. So recommendations as well.
And what I wanted to reiterate is it's all about the narrative and it's all about the storytelling as well. I mean, this is why video has been so important in campaigns, whether it's a big brand campaign, small business campaign, agency. Video is a great way to tell a story, and live is just another way of getting your message across and telling a good story. So again, I think the more that people watch your live, the more they're going to expect to have a Facebook Live at a lot of events. And so the way to continue that two-way conversation is to continue using the platform and creating and, furthering your message.
Okay, I think we have time for one more, and we'll go back there.
Thank you. How appropriate to speak, to ask a question after Mr. Goodfriend, Bela Gedeon, Embassy of Hungary, Press Attaché. Quick question following up on the live coverage to Ms. Lynch and Ms. Young. Can you elaborate on how you handle copyright issues during live coverage? I think this is very exciting from several points of view, sports or entertainment, but particularly in case of political or diplomatic events. Did you have any problems of copyright issues or anything that came into the live coverage of a certain event? Thank you.
So the one copyright issue that we do take a look at on Facebook Live a lot is music. When people are at concerts and they're trying to go Facebook Live, if you don't have the rights to that music, you won't be able to post that Facebook Live or go live at all. So that's the one where we've seen the most often being used. Again, we have community standards globally that is 24 hours, 7 days a week, speaking 40 different languages, looking for content that might violate our community standards. And unfortunately, you're right, copyright infringement is a big one. And we've seen that mostly in musical events, not so much in the diplomatic community, not so much in government as well. Honestly, I think sometimes we think, the more, again, we cannot prevent from people from using their phone and going Facebook Live at public events, but at concerts, I'll have to get back to you on the sports, but mostly in music, we've seen copyright.
We have very similar. I guess my recommendation would be, if it is a diplomatic event, typically you have kind of planned and what's going to be happening during the live stream. So think about, what the music is going to be or the different things that you might need to get permissions on prior to going live. Technology called Content ID, which actually has basically a database of all copyrighted material. So it will come down if and be blocked if it is somebody's copyrighted product, music, whatever, and you don't have permission to use it.
Thank you so much for coming. I think all of our guests will try to hang around for just a couple of minutes if other folks have questions, but I wanted to just thank the Italian Embassy again for hosting us and to all our panelists.